So let's pick this up now in the last section of chapter 1. And above the firmament that was over the heads was, notice again this language, the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. And so oftentimes they're describing God as the likeness of something, just because, again, how do you describe God? And I saw the colour of amber as the appearance of fire round about it, from the appearance of his loins even upwards, and from the appearance of his loins even downwards. I saw, as it were, the appearance of fire, and it had brightness round about. Now, this imagery here, again, is really, really important. I want to actually jump back for a moment. I should have done this earlier, to verse 4. As this vision opens, Ezekiel says, "And I looked and beheld a whirlwind came out of the north, and a great cloud, and a fire enfolding it. And the brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as the colour of amber out of the midst of the fire." So I want us to kind of think through these things that Ezekiel is seeing. Whirlwind, the Hebrew word here is ruach. Now, ruach is a really, really rich word. It can mean lots of different things, and it can mean a breath. It can mean spirit with a little s. It can mean spirit with a big S, and it can mean wind. So it's a very, very rich word, but it symbolizes this idea of that Ezekiel is seeing spirit and cloud and fire. And these are representative of the divine presence, the Shekinah, right? Because it's the visible presence of God, because humans don't normally see God, but they see this visible representation. You can think about this with the Exodus, and they're coming out and they're led by God, but what are they seeing? A fire by night, a pillar of fire, and a cloud. So these are representations, again, of the glory of God. So when we come over here and we're talking about this idea of seeing God and fire, I think about the prophet Joseph when he says that God dwells in everlasting burnings. So what's the imagery of that? Fire can be both destructive, but it also can be a cleansing fire. So this fire is the sense of that mortals, if they're coming into the presence of God, can be destroyed, can be consumed by the fire, unless God does something for them. We talk about that as in terms of a transfiguration of some kind to enable mere humans to enter the presence of God. But then notice verse 28, "And the appearance of the bow that was in the cloud in the day of rain." So we also get this imagery of God on his throne sitting in judgment, but like in Revelation chapter 4, that image is kind of surrounded by this rainbow. And as we know from the story of Noah in particular, the rainbow was a symbol for God. And the symbol that it represents is God's mercy. And so I want to reiterate that. We've got these cherubim here. We've got the rainbow here. All of these are reinforcing. God wants Ezekiel to know before he goes into the judgments, he wants him to know absolutely clearly this important aspect of mercy in any judgments that God does.
This is so very helpful, because so often what happens with the Bible writers is that they occupy their cultural space. They know exactly what they are thinking and experiencing, and sometimes they leave things out. They don't explain all this background. And so we jump in, we're like, this is a bizarre vision. What does it mean? And we struggle to make sense of it in our own lives. So this context is super helpful to realize that God is conveying a message of ultimate mercy and hope. And it's couched in all these symbols that God is this purifying presence of fire, that he will purify us and bring us into his presence.
Which, by the way, if you put it into Ezekiel's context, in exile out in Babylon, in this time period, about 5 years after they've been carried away from Jerusalem, he's a priest. It's his 30th birthday. It's all rooted in the temple. And here he's seeing the presence of God in Babylon. In their day, the presence of God should be in the Holy of Holies, in the temple, back in Jerusalem, at the mercy seat, which, by the way, don't you love that? That we call it the mercy seat and not the justice seat. I know he's got lots of justice and judgment, but I love the fact that they call it the mercy seat. And you've set this up beautifully to bookend the book of Ezekiel with mercy and mercy with a whole bunch of judgment in that middle portion. So here's Ezekiel probably scratching his head saying, wait a minute, what is going on? Why is God's presence out here and not in the Holy of Holies? That's where it belongs. People should be coming to the temple. Wonder if something's going really, really wrong back in Jerusalem.
And he's going to pick that up later in the chat in his book. That's going to be a really, really important image that he wants to talk about.
In fact, that one question may be driving a big portion of this text. I didn't put this up here, but I probably should have. The big question is, why is God's presence in Babylon? Why has it gone into exile? And then God reveals the reason, that the people have rejected God again and again and again. Therefore, he has to judge them by withdrawing his presence from them. Now, I want you to think about sacrament. When we go to the sacrament, we promise to remember God and to do his will. And if we do, we have his presence. And if we choose to purposely and consistently and intentionally and persistently deny God and be away from God, we will lose his presence and we will experience these things. But God says, look, you can always remember me and come back in. So this is really driving this entire 48 chapters. Why is God's presence no longer in his Holy of Holies? In fact, actually, why is the Holy of Holies come out into Babylon? It's because God is judging the people, but eventually his enduring promises made to Abraham will give the opportunity for all people to be blessed, Israel, the nations, and all of creation.